Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to my studio. In today's lesson, we're going to be painting the red, white, and blue bouquet. So anyways, I'm looking forward to jumping in and painting this with you. We're also going to talk about how I choose my background colors for my paintings. And yeah, we're going to be using this Catalyst Wedge tool, and I'm really excited. These flowers are so beautiful, and they're just really inspiring. And I hope that you stick around and watch this lesson. If you like it, don't forget to share it with a friend. So let's just paint. Okay, to start off with, I'm going to talk a little bit about this color. I thought I wanted something sort of like different to contrast with what I'm going to do in the final background. So I've got like red, white, and blue, and I thought I'm going to put this orange down, and then it's going to leave some brightness around the flowers. But then I'm going to probably finish off with sort of some cobalt blue and like a light blue. To mix that color, you want to use, I used the cadmium yellow deep and the primary red, and then I used some liquitex gesso. So I'll leave a link to my supplies in the description. So I've got all my paint out, and I'll go over the colors quickly. So I've got cobalt blue, and I've got this Liquitex Basics light blue permanent. Then I've got titanium white, and I put my white in different piles so that I don't make a mess of all the white. If I go into it with, say, this white will go more with the blue, this one could go more with my reds. That way the white kind of stays clean. And then I've got out, this is some quinacridone magenta, and this is another color that I'm not too familiar with, but it's in the Liquitex Basics called Deep Violet. And then I've got out sap, viridian, primary yellow. This one is the only paint that I use that's kind of more from the expensive paint, and this is the transparent yellow iron oxide from Golden, because it's the only brand that sells that, or Liquitex Professional. And then you've got the, this is my Pyrrole Red, and then I've got some alizarin hue and burnt sienna, and then there's some black. This is some olive green color, another one of those random colors that I picked up from Michael's, but it's kind of fun to play around with these different colors. All right, so there you have it. There's my colors. I always keep a little spritzer nearby to keep my paint wet, even though this is a Masterson Stay Wet palette, so I've got the paper on top of that sponge underneath that keeps it kind of wet. Okay, so now you know what's going on there. So I also have my reference photo in a rectangle to kind of match my rectangle canvas. And I took it in a light next to, like, just the window lighting, so that there's some lighting and shadows there, as well as for you to watch. You know, I've got the whole bouquet there just to keep you inspired. But I'm going to kind of go off my composition of my photo there. So I'm going to start off with some of this transparent yellow oxide, and I'll use that to block in the hydrangea. So I'm just using the Catalyst Wedge tool, but you can follow along using whatever brush you want. And I kind of want to just sort of block in everything really quick. Just kind of, as I go, I'm kind of rescaling and resizing everything, looking at how much space that takes up in the photo. And you don't need to go and try to make your reference photo exact to your canvas. It's just when you're painting kind of abstract flowers like this, you know, you can kind of go with your imagination a little bit. So I'm expanding them as I go, looking at sort of how much space is there. So I figured this is pretty close. Now just block in some of the leaf there. And I also have a video where I talk about how to paint that background in. I believe I did that in the lesson I just posted. You can go on and watch the lesson I did on, what was it? The lilacs. If you go and find the video I just posted recently on the lilacs, I talk about how to paint this sort of background in. And there's a bit of a vase there, but to keep it kind of abstract, I'm just gonna go kind of put some stems in there, and we'll see. Maybe I'll put the top of the vase in, but maybe I won't. Maybe I'll leave it out. So what I've got here, I'm testing this color. I've mixed up a little bit of the sap green and some of the primary yellow. And I just thought to dull it down, I used a little bit of that alizarin. Just putting a little bit of in my block in. Normally I do the green kind of near the end, but I'm putting a little bit of it in the block-in stage here because I want to be able to show these white flowers, so I want to get a little bit of that dark green in there right away. So I'm kind of giving it a bit of a shape. Now that there's some darker color around it, you'll be able to see when I put the white on top, all those hydrangea petals, you'll be able to see the white show up. And then there's going to be the red down there. This is a really pretty bouquet. I just went to Trader Joe's and I didn't know what I was going to paint, and then I saw these flowers and I thought, well, it's kind of that we're getting close to the 4th of July, so why not? So I'm just kind of looking around and blocking in that darker green. And then I'm leaving space for the flowers. And then I can look at some of these greens that sort of are popping up there, and they're kind of the base for the irises. So I'll put in a few of those little marks. Those will be sort of the bottom of those irises there. Just like we did in my videos, I've got lots of videos on hydrangeas, the blue ones, but not many on the white. So that's also another, I thought it's a good excuse to paint some white hydrangeas too. And another thing you'll notice is when I move the catalyst tool around, if I use the edges of it, I can make some really unique little marks by swiping some of the paint away too. Just another thought. So we could have painted the underpaint, for example. You could paint it sort of a green color so that when you swipe away the white, you'll see some of those little kind of lime green colors, but I don't mind. I kind of like the glow of the orange actually, because it just, I don't know, it's just kind of fun. It's a painting after all. So I think I like painting this way because it gives a sense that it's painted versus made by an AI robot. All the art that's coming out on that I see is so realistic, but it's a lot of it I look closely and it's like you can't tell if it's an AI painting or if it's a real painting anymore. Okay, so look at that. You can make such a quick and easy hydrangea with this tool. And I really like the white hydrangeas. So as I paint this, I'm thinking about what I was wanting to talk about, and that's like, how do you pick a background? Especially tricky when you first start painting. You kind of look around and you can spend hours scrolling trying to figure out what everyone else does. But I kind of just figure, I started with this warm pink color because everything that shows through the flowers will be consistent. It'll all have this sort of same, even if the colors are different, it's going to have that same similar color shining through. So in a way it brings a little harmony to the painting to have that underpaint. And then later, when we add a blue to the background on top, it'll add a nice contrast to the light blues and stuff that I'm going to put on there. So you have to stick around and watch the video to see that. So you can see now I'm building up more of that color. And I'm using kind of what's on my spatula and just mixing it into the white. So it's getting a little bit more of a white tone. But I don't want to completely cover up what I have underneath. So I'm just dabbing little bits here and there. And I started painting with this tool early this year. Pretty much decided I'm going to do something different after painting for so many years. Oil and acrylic flowers using my brushes. I one day thought I would try it, and my first painting was a peony, and it was just right away I felt like I found something I really loved. So it has its, you know, pros and its cons like everything, but I really enjoy it. And I've had a lot of good feedback on it so far. Everyone seems really happy that I'm trying this out. I get the odd thumbs down, but that's okay. I was there at one point trying to do everything a certain way, and I get it. I wouldn't have ever thumbs down anyone's video, but everyone's entitled to their artistic opinion. But I've kind of done all the different styles, so I don't mind. This is my favorite for having fun, this style. Nothing makes me more happy than applying paint like it's icing on a cake. I always like to put a few of the little kind of side angle, don't forget those, kind of coming off the edge. I'll kind of put a few of those little All right, so that looks like a good start on the hydrangea. Now I'm going to start blocking in some of the other flowers. Okay. Just sort of blocking in some of those ones over here. I really like them because they're, you know, touching the white flower there, so get a bit of that contrast there. Okay, and then I like to add a little bit of that blue somewhere else. So I'll put a little bit, you know, just here and there, down in the rest of there. And then I'm gonna now just switch and block in some of the reds. So I'll just quickly clean off my palette and get back to you there. So I'll just use the corner of this tool, and there's one kind of up in front of this. So I got a bunch of that white paint there. And just kind of filling in that background there. Okay, so we're just blocking in, and we'll add some of the details in a little bit. Okay, so now I already like how those colors, and I like the composition a lot, so that's really good. And then I'm just wiping off my wedge tool a little, and I'm going to add some of that pyrrole red because I know it is really bright and it'll really stand out on these flowers. So I'm going to put in a few of the highlights using that little tool, and then I can add some more of the detail. And up here I'll do the same. I'll put sort of there's a kind of a petal in front there. Put in a little bit of the and there's a nice little you can always go back in and darken some of those things. There's also a few of those. I noticed there's a few of those little buds, but I want to show one. So I could just put one of those kind of hanging down, and I'll draw a little stem. Just to have a little more action there. Put some of that color up there. So far I really like that. That's really fun. Now I'm going to go and put on some of the highlights to the blue. So I'm just going to wipe off and we'll go and add a little bit of white to the cobalt blue to get the light highlight for the irises. So I added a little bit of this red to the mix, so it kind of makes it a little more of that kind of little bit of that purple in there. Do want to stick to the blue, red, white, and blue theme, so I'm kind of just ignoring the reference on that one. I'll just keep it to this sort of more blue iris. So I'm looking at the light there, and I'm going to kind of bring down that petal as much as I can with this tool, control the brush stroke. I'll try to add a little bit of light on those petals there on the side that has the... So even though it's abstract, it still has some form and design of a real flower petal. Doesn't have to be perfect, remember? And just put a little bit of that highlight there and there. And there's one over in the back. Ooh, I like that brush stroke. And then I'll put some of the light coming down there. And there's some... Let me just get a little more, getting kind of... You never want to chintz out on your paint because you need to have enough paint to make your marks. And also another mistake a lot of people make is they put out 1 or 2 colors at a time on their palette, and then they can't really get anywhere because they've got, like, you know, 1 or 2 colors out, and you need to be able to mix colors. So even if you think you might not need yellow in your painting, you may need it in another mixture. So always put out enough paint so you're not stuck. So I really enjoy that so far. Now I can add a little, I could even go a little lighter on some of those highlights, so I could take a little more white into the mix. And I won't add a ton of highlights because that'll start to, it'll just start to diminish what I've got there with the little bits of value shift that I've already made with adding the light to it. But I'll add a little bit of a highlight even more in some areas, like the edges of the petals. Okay, so I've mixed up a few greens here. I've got some sap in this one, and some cad yellow, the primary yellow, and a little bit of white. And I'm just going to add a few of the, you know, kind of some of those marks to show some of the veins in the hydrangea leaves, and some of the lighter values to some of these greens. You don't want to cover them all up. You want to leave some of the darker values there. And also keeping with sort of the whole abstract kind of theme. So don't get too into the details. You know, I added a bit there, but you can kind of just make some different marks to show just some different values. And I'll add a little more white to that because acrylic paint dries a lot darker, so sometimes I kind of gotta overdo it at first so that it comes in good. So another thing I want to really do is make sure I get these little leaves in there underneath some of the just sort of put some of those greens up in there. I just sort of kind of, you know, go with the flow here. I'm not really too worried about it being just perfect. I more like the different kind of tones of green. And I'll put a little bit of a stem kind of coming across that hydrangea there. Just kind of go with the flow and, you know, don't worry too much about how perfect it gets. I'm just going to block in a little more of that, the green kind of coming down to sort of kind of ground it in a little more. Okay, and then I'm going to just maybe get it a little more, another level up of green, something a little brighter. Okay, so now you can kind of see there's lots of different greens. I like the abstract feel of all the different kind of petal strokes. Okay, now I'm going to add, I've mixed up a little bit of the burnt sienna with the primary yellow to make this sort of yellow ochre color. And I'm going to use a little bit of that and kind of test it out. See if I can put these little iris, you know, the tops where the little yellow comes out. I'm going to start off with a darker yellow like that and put in those marks. Okay, and then you can go and add a little bit of that primary yellow, you know, on top, so you kind of see, you know, kind of the light showing. And I'm not even close to getting it like the way it looks in the picture, but it's giving you the total, you know, feeling of the iris, even though it's not exact. So you're getting the whole feeling of that iris there. So, and white to it. And I'm going to start by blocking in the lighter color on this side of the painting where I know I've got more of these darker flowers to kind of contrast to. So I think about showing off things in the painting by using the lighter value background near the darkest flowers, so they really kind of stand out. And then I'll use the darker blue background next to the lighter flowers. So I'll kind of transition that slowly. I'm trying to use my catalyst tool to block it in just because it kind of keeps it loose, and you really can't cheat then and start tightening up your painting. It still kind of has the same effect. So that's that permanent blue light color. Or it's called, no, light blue permanent, that's the color. You can pop a little sky hole there. And now I'm going to kind of blend it over into a cobalt blue, kind of light blue color, so that you get more of a little darker. Or I might even just use the color itself with less white in it, just to keep it simple. So if you don't have this color, just use any sort of turquoise, or you could even use the cobalt blue with a little viridian in white, and you'll get this color. So I'm gonna test that out, and sure enough, of course, because I mixed less white in, you can see that it's a little darker. Now I'm gonna add a little bit, I'll use a little bit of cobalt and more of that color itself, just to get a darker blue next to the hydrangeas. So now I'm kind of using the background to kind of show off the lighter flowers. So it's more another version of kind of a gradation, gradient, so light to dark. Well, thank you everyone for watching this lesson, and I hope you like this addition of red, white, and blue flowers, and I hope that it helps you with your painting in general, just when you think of fun things you can do for your background colors. And I hope you all have a great day, and happy painting, everyone. Thank you.